The Middle East is entering one of the most dangerous phases in its modern history as military escalation moves dangerously close to nuclear infrastructure. What was once a conventional confrontation between regional powers is now evolving into a high-stakes geopolitical crisis where the risks are no longer limited to battlefield losses, but extend to the possibility of a nuclear disaster with global consequences. At the center of this growing crisis is Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, its only operational nuclear reactor and one of the most sensitive facilities in the region. Recent reports confirm that a projectile landed near the plant, marking yet another incident in a series of strikes that have occurred over a short span of time. Although there were no casualties and no direct damage reported to the facility, the significance of the event lies not in what happened, but in what could have happened. The fact that a nuclear site active and containing radioactive material has now come within striking distance changes the entire equation of this conflict. For decades, nuclear facilities were treated as red lines, even in times of war. The fear of triggering a radiological disaster acted as a deterrent, preventing such targets from being engaged directly or even indirectly. That restraint now appears to be weakening. Bushehr's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Unlike enrichment facilities or research centers, it is an active nuclear reactor. This means that at any given moment, it contains nuclear fuel and radioactive materials that require constant cooling and careful management. A disruption, whether from a direct hit or even nearby shockwaves, could lead to catastrophic consequences. Its location along the Persian Gulf further amplifies the risk. Any accident could spread radioactive contamination across neighboring countries within hours, impacting millions of people and destabilizing an already fragile region. The International Atomic Energy Agency has responded with clear concern. Its leadership has warned that continued military activity near such facilities could trigger a radiological incident with widespread consequences. This is not just a warning for the region, it is a global concern. Nuclear accidents do not respect borders. The fallout, both environmental and political, would extend far beyond Iran. At the same time, Israeli military operations appear to be expanding in scope. Reports indicate that strikes have targeted not only military installations, but also infrastructure linked to Iran's nuclear program. Heavy water facilities, uranium processing sites, and major industrial centers have all reportedly come under attack. While these facilities are part of Iran's broader nuclear ecosystem, their targeting marks a shift toward a more aggressive strategy, one that aims to degrade capability rather than simply deter action. Iran, in response, has adopted an increasingly hardened tone. Its military leadership has made it clear that future retaliation will not follow the traditional model of proportional response. One senior commander issued a stark warning. You tested us once before. This time, the equation will no longer be an eye for an eye. Just wait. This statement signals a potential shift toward asymmetrical or escalatory retaliation, one that could target not just military assets, but critical infrastructure across the region. Indeed, Iran's actions already suggest a widening battlefield. Missile strikes have reportedly reached deep into Israeli territory, including areas near highly sensitive installations. The mention of sites such as Dimona, long associated with Israel's nuclear capabilities, indicates that the unspoken rules around nuclear deterrence are beginning to erode. What was once considered unthinkable is now being openly discussed and, in some cases, tested. The conflict is no longer contained between two primary actors. It has expanded geographically and politically, drawing in multiple countries and proxy forces. U.S. military positions in the Gulf have come under threat. Regional groups have launched attacks that further complicate the situation. Maritime routes, particularly those critical for global oil supply, are increasingly vulnerable. Each new front adds another layer of unpredictability, increasing the risk of miscalculation. One of the most concerning aspects of this escalation is the involvement of multiple global powers directly or indirectly. Bushehr itself is operated with Russian assistance, adding a significant geopolitical dimension. Any damage to the facility could compel international reactions that extend far beyond diplomatic protests. The presence of global stakeholders raises the stakes considerably, turning a regional conflict into a potential international crisis. Amid this rising tension, there have been signs of strategic recalibration. The United States, under President Donald Trump, has reportedly paused certain types of strikes, particularly those targeting Iran's energy infrastructure. This move appears to be a calculated effort to prevent the situation from spiraling into a broader economic or environmental catastrophe. However, such pauses are temporary by nature and do not necessarily indicate a long-term de-escalation strategy. Behind the scenes, communication channels remain open, albeit indirectly. Iran has confirmed that messages are being exchanged through intermediaries rather than through formal negotiations. Its foreign minister made this position clear, stating, "I declare with absolute certainty that there are no negotiations or talks for the American side." This distinction is important. It reflects a situation where dialogue exists, but without the structure or commitment required for meaningful diplomacy. He further elaborated on the nature of these exchanges, saying this is neither called negotiation nor dialogue nor anything. It is simply an exchange of messages through our friends. These words underscore the fragility of the current situation. There is communication, but no trust. There is contact, but no framework for resolution. The warnings from Iran's leadership have also become increasingly direct in addressing the potential consequences of further escalation. The foreign minister cautioned if they enter this war, it may not have an end and will bring a disaster to the entire region, which is not in anyone's interest. This is not just rhetoric. It is a reflection of the broader strategic reality. A full-scale conflict involving multiple regional and global actors would be difficult, if not impossible, to contain. Reaffirming Iran's current stance, he stated, "Our policy at the moment is to continue resistance, to continue defending the country. We have no plans for negotiations, and no negotiations have taken place until now." This indicates that, at least for now, Tehran sees little value in pursuing formal diplomatic channels under current conditions. Perhaps most striking is the framing of the conflict itself. The foreign minister declared this war is neither Iran's nor America's war. It is Israel's war. This statement reflects a broader narrative being promoted within Iran that the conflict has been externally driven and that others are being drawn into it. He also criticized the international response, particularly from European nations, stating they have shown that Europe is really no longer a major player in the international arena. This suggests a perception that global institutions and traditional diplomatic actors are failing to influence the course of events. On a more philosophical level, he warned about the direction of global politics, saying whoever has more force will impose a peace that they think is good for them. This remark highlights a growing concern that power dynamics, rather than international law or agreements, are increasingly shaping outcomes. Finally, in what could be interpreted as a signal of confidence or defiance, he concluded the enemy that was seeking our unconditional surrender is now talking about negotiations. This means accepting defeat. Whether this reflects reality or strategic messaging, it underscores the hardened positions on both sides. Meanwhile, within Iran, there is growing debate about the relevance of international agreements such as the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Some lawmakers argue that these frameworks have failed to protect the country's nuclear infrastructure, raising questions about their future role. While Iran continues to state that it has no intention of developing nuclear weapons, the erosion of trust in international systems could have long-term implications. The broader danger lies in the normalization of attacks near nuclear infrastructure. Each incident lowers the threshold for future actions. What was once unthinkable becomes conceivable, and what becomes conceivable eventually becomes possible. This gradual erosion of restraint is perhaps the most alarming aspect of the current crisis. The potential consequences are immense. A nuclear incident, even a limited one, could trigger environmental damage on a scale that affects multiple countries. Energy markets could be thrown into chaos, with disruptions to oil supply routes sending shockwaves through the global economy. Military alliances could be tested and new ones formed as countries are forced to respond to rapidly changing circumstances. For now, Bushehr remains intact, but the pattern of strikes, the escalation in rhetoric, and the widening scope of the conflict all point toward a situation that is becoming increasingly difficult to control. The margin for error is shrinking, and the stakes are rising with each passing day. This is no longer just a regional conflict. It is a global concern, one that sits at the intersection of military strategy, nuclear safety, and geopolitical rivalry. The world is watching closely, aware that the next move, whether calculated or accidental, could change everything.